Alright, let's briefly interrupt the horror theme of the month to go into a couple of new releases. One that just came out this weekend, and one that I caught on its way out. I saw, like, the penultimate showing before it left the theater. But let's go ahead and start with Amsterdam. And just right away, I'm just going to say that I don't know how coherent I can make thoughts and opinions on Amsterdam, just in general, but I assure you that as regardless of how incoherent whatever I'm about to say might be, the more incoherent it is, the more it's just going to reflect the movie itself, because I don't know what the fuck this shit is. But David O. Russell has made another movie after Joy, finally, where he has gotten the biggest cast he possibly can that Adam McKay didn't already have a hold of, and brought us I don't know what. There's something at the beginning that says a lot of this actually happened. So it's one of those cases, probably like American Hustle, where there's like a vague outline of possibly a true story of sorts from history, and then he just kind of threw a bunch of actors into it and said, hey, let's improvise. I wrote somewhat of a script, but let's just improvise. And then whatever the hell this movie is came out. And I was a fan of Russell for a while, because you got his early stuff like Three Kings and Flirting with Disaster and stuff like that. Then he kind of got more, and then there was I Heart Huckabees, and then kind of at the starting point of I Heart Huckabees, he started to appeared to become what he's known for now, where he has a lot of these casts together, and just a lot of shit happens. Some unpredictable, some just random for the sake of it, I guess. But he still found something, like with The Fighter, which is a movie that I still love. You kind of got the sense of that with the characters, but there was still something human about all of them, and how they all came together for this sort of one particular objective, and it's great, and the performances are great. And then you have Silver Linings Playbook, which is a little more chaotic, but still kind of has the same energy and the same sort of vibe, and the sort of like dysfunctional family kind of vibe. And it works as far as I remember. I haven't rewatched it recently, but last time I did, it still worked. And then American Hustle came right after that, and American Hustle was starting to get a little more incoherent and all over the place and just doing weird shit for the sake of doing weird shit. I still to this day have no idea what the hell Bradley Cooper was doing in that. And just bizarre choice after bizarre choice, but still a great ensemble, mostly great performances. I thought Bale and Renner were especially great in American Hustle. But all over the damn place still, and it didn't quite hold up as well as I'd never loved it, but I liked it when it came out. And having rewatched it maybe a year or two ago, it wasn't. I don't know. It just kind of got weirder. It seems to have since 2013. Um, and then Joy happened, and everybody forgot about it. And then this one is kind of trying to bring that sort of American Hustle energy, I think. I don't know. There's very, 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 very little energy in this. Even though I think it thinks it's being energetic. I honestly can't tell. It's a very weird feeling watching this movie. Most of it is set in 1933, and feels at first like it's kind of trying to do a Coen Brothers kind of thing, or kind of that kind of feel. But then Russell also can't help but be Russell, which normally I wouldn't mind, but it's like his style is kind of starting to bleed into other things. Like American Hustle felt way too much like Scorsese with the narration and the fast editing and stuff like that. And this, I don't really know what it's trying to be or what it wants to be. I can't even tell when it wants to be funny, because there are lines in here that are just sort of big question marks of where the character's coming from that said this thing. Is it a comedic delivery? Is it an intentionally like deadpan delivery or a flat delivery? I don't know, and it feels like everything is sort of disjointed, like nothing's really kind of has the same objective. It's just kind of a whole bunch of different things coming from different places and remaining in those different places while being in the same room. Like, there's a lot of this movie of actors being put in a room, and they're together in this room, and they're talking to each other, but nothing can really be deciphered as one connecting thing. And I don't know. I have no idea what the point of it all is, I guess you could say. It tries to, like, really ram some points home, like, at the very end, but I just kept thinking, like, is this from out of nowhere, or is this what he was trying to say the whole time? Something about human decency and something like that. I don't know. Somehow we got to this point, going through, like, political intrigue and conspiracies, and then going back further, and there's really contrived love stories going on, and then before that, there's this murder thing going on, and it feels like it's trying to have a vibe of, like, a murder mystery, because Christian Bale and John David Washington get framed for the murder of, I guess, spoiler alert, Taylor Swift. And who I felt like was built up a lot for being in this movie, and she's literally the murder victim that sets off the story, and we don't even see her again in flashbacks. It's just over for her right away, pretty much. But the thing about it is that you would think, with the sort of old-fashioned vibe we've got here, and there being a whole plot about them being framed for this murder, that you could see, like, maybe attempts at, like, a Chinatown kind of thing, where there was kind of a mystery element that had to unravel as we discovered things with Jay Goodies as he was looking into things. But here, they're trying to do that, but also we just straight up know who killed her, because we see Timothy Olyphant come from, what was, like, I don't know if a barber shop or something, and he came out and he pushed her into the street, and he points at Christian Bale and John David Washington and says, they did it. And that's the framing. So, I don't... And then it goes from there, but instead of, like, oh man, somebody just got murdered brutally, I wonder why that happened, I wonder who Timothy Olyphant is, what's going on here? And Bale comes on the narration and says, you know what, let me tell you about the time me and John David Washington met Margot Robbie. Which, I mean, yeah, everything eventually leads to a conclusion that wraps up this storyline. But this movie is like 2 hours and 15 minutes. There is a lot of ground to apparently cover, with just stuff coming in and out, seemingly spontaneously. And the thing about it is, sometimes it doesn't matter. And I think that's probably the approach Russell is trying to take, is it's about the journey to certain places, not just about getting to a destination. Everything in between has to be something really interesting also, or fun, or intriguing, or whatever. But this movie is... And I really try not to throw this word out often, because it's such a lazy criticism, and could mean so many different things. Where it's just like this sort of umbrella comment that doesn't really say anything about how you feel about something, but just to throw this word out there once, I will say that one thing I can take away from this movie is how excruciatingly boring it is for most of it. And that's the thing too, is we talk about movies that, like, have a lot of problems in them, like movies that are, like, notoriously bad, where you can point out the specific things that make them bad. But it's like, as long as you have that to do, like, as long as it's bad for a particular reason, there's still... it's not excruciating to watch it. But when a movie is boring, I feel like those are the worst kinds of movies, that give you nothing to work with, good or bad. I guess you could say the bad is just how fucking all over the place it is. But yeah, for the most part, I think a lot of it is just that you just can't tell, like I said, like, when it's trying to be a comedy, when it's trying to be serious, nothing is coming together in any way, shape, or form. Nothing is clicking. It's all just throwing as much as it possibly can. And like I said, actors come in and out of it, and most of them are... I feel like the only person that came out of this completely unscathed was Bale, and maybe Rami Malek, maybe, but and maybe De Niro. But the thing about it is that it's not the actors that are a problem. It's that almost none of them have really anything to do here except sort of come in and say mundane lines that might be trying to be funny, might be trying to be intriguing, but don't work either way, no matter what it is. But Bale's the one where you can see how truly committed he is, no matter. I feel like that's in any case where like Bale's going to be amazing pretty much no matter what, and this isn't an exception. But I don't know what the hell's going on with everybody else. I kept really hoping that because I feel like Chris Rock in particular has a lot to offer as an actor that he doesn't really get to show much, which is why I was so psyched about season 4 of Fargo, which a lot of people complained that they thought he was miscast. But I still really dug him in that part and really thought he found this sort of commanding presence. And you could sense like the pain in him, especially when he had to like start hurting people. And here, I kept waiting for him to have a purpose. And he's not. Like, I almost wondered what it would be like if him and John David Washington had switched parts. And if it would have made more sense if they switched parts. But I don't think much of anything could have made this movie make a lot more sense. I kept thinking, like, what if there was maybe more of a mystery element to Taylor Swift's killing? And not just us literally seeing Timothy Olyphant do it and somehow get away with it right in public with all these witnesses. But I don't know, just everything else around it just seems like it's here just to be like set decoration, I guess. And nobody's being used to their strengths. Like Mike Myers goes through this whole thing where he like goes through a whole glass monologue where it's like you can see they're kind of using Mike Myers to his strengths, but still everything just feels like it has no purpose whatsoever, and just everything feels like just blank, like so many blank pages in the script were just turned into, hey, just improvise or do whatever the fuck. Which you really, and I feel like a lot of the time there's a lot of good that's come from directors that insist on a lot of improvisation. But most of the time, I feel like being so reliant on it is how movies like this end up happening. Where it's like, you look at this and you see the cast list and you're like, how did this go wrong? You do also have some people who are sort of can see through things, and like I did see a lot of comments when the promotional material started coming out. When we didn't really know anything about the movie, they just saw the cast list, and there were people that were saying, like, I always get really suspicious when there's a big cast list because it's going to be the only thing that it has to offer. But it's like, I don't know. These are particularly big names all here together. There's got to be something that drew them to this. And I have I couldn't tell you what that was, but yeah, and you get all these people in, and you're like, you say like, oh hey, do this or try this or whatever, or say this line now, or honestly just say whatever the hell you want, or do whatever the hell you want. We'll have fun with the spontaneity. But it's like, even when you have people like this, sometimes the best thing they can do is the best work that they can do is with a script. And so that's how we end up with these big casts in these all over the damn place movies. That's the only thing I can come up with to make any sense of how this movie could have possibly turned out the way that it is in its form now. Because even John David Washington, who really proved himself in BlacKkKlansman, and had like this sort of, stoic presence in the middle of Tenet, here, I feel like he's basically, I felt like he was here for a while, this very, very talented person, who obviously has very, very talented blood inside him, was here to basically just kill Bale's lines, because there was, I wrote a couple of them down. There was one where he was talking about, Bale was talking about having to do an autopsy, and he went through this whole thing about how, well, yeah, I've done 2 autopsies. There was one where somebody thought I left something in the small intestine, and then one where I actually left something in the small intestine. And it's supposed to be this funny, quirky moment or whatever. And then John David Washington's follow-up line to that is, well, now we know how you work with small intestine. And it's like, okay, you take the line before, and then you just sort of flatten it for seemingly no reason. And I may have completely forgotten about that line if it wasn't for the fact that there is another one very, very close to this one in time, like maybe 5 or 10 minutes later or something, where the same thing happens. Where Bale has a line that's actually kind of funny, where he's talking about how he ended up in World War One, and he says he's going through all the reasons he's here, and then the last one is, also I believe my in-laws sent me here to get rid of me. And that's kind of a funny line, and it got a laugh from somebody in the theater, and then right after that line, right after the laugh, John David Washington chimes in and says, well, that all sounds good, except the in-laws part. And it's like, thank you again for taking Bale's line, presenting it to us again, and then just sort of squashing it. What is the... I don't know. It's like they were actively trying to kill the moments that were trying to be decent. I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if that's like bad improvisation, or if that's Russell's not great script. I have no idea. I'm not even sure what a first script on this would look like. By the way, I don't even know that I have confirmation that there was a lot of improvisation, but I know that that's Russell's style, so I'm going, and with how it turned out, I'm going to assume that's how a lot of this came to be. But like I said, there's a whole lot of feelings that I feel like you're supposed to have, and you can see, like, oh, I feel like we're supposed to feel this way, I think, but it's just not coming through. You have to keep making assumptions of how you're going to feel, just like how I had to assume this is probably all improvised, or most of it. So when the Margot Robbie scenes happen, you really do get the sense they're supposed to have this sort of intoxicating energy, and we're supposed to, like, be falling in love with her in the same way that John David Washington, like, at the same time as John David Washington is. But it's all so incredibly artificial that I just don't know. I feel like that's Margot Robbie's... She has two specific tones that she can really reach. She has these moments where she can create characters that feel very real and have this very sort of human way about them that really comes through the screen, and you can really feel everything this person feels. And then there's the other Margot Robbie, where everything is so artificial, so clear, you can clearly see her actress wheels turning at every single little tick, and how everything is a decision, a conscious decision made to make sure this performance looks amazing, but it's just so, I guess, mechanical in how it looks. And this is another one of those. And yeah, like I said, it's supposed to be something really dreamlike and enchanting about it, but it just all looks so... It looks and feels incredibly fake. Nobody really feels like a real person here at all. And it's like, maybe the point is that a lot of them feel bigger than life, but like I said, if every character in this felt bigger than life, the movie would not be the fucking drag that it is, and feel every second of its length that it does. So there's that. I talked about Mike Myers. Always with him is Michael Shannon. And like, when I think back to, like, you know, what Shannon was doing, what Chris Rock was doing, and it's like, usually they can pretty much bring something. Like, they're the ones that can kind of break through a bad movie, and it's like, oh, well, at least they brought that. But it's like, even they feel completely wasted. Just, and the fact that you have, like, Mike Myers and Michael Shannon always together, and Myers is kind of like a showy one, and Shannon is, I don't know what, the guy that's just always with him? I don't know. He's not fucking Garth, so I don't know who else needs to always be by Mike Myers' side, but I don't know. It's all so incredibly disjointed. Zoe Saldana, I kept forgetting was even in the movie, and she's supposed to be like this really, much like the John David Washington and Margot Robbie scenes, we're kind of supposed to, like I said, I kept forgetting she was even in it. I guess she's supposed to be Bale's, like, romantic savior to get kind of out of all this. But they had amazing chemistry in Out of the Furnace together. As a couple that had already, like, kind of broken up, but were kind of, like, meeting again. And they had some really beautiful moments in Out of the Furnace that are just... miles and miles and miles away when you look at whatever the hell these scenes are here they're supposed to do. So nothing comes of that. Um, who else have we even... There's so many fucking people in this. I'm sure there's plenty of people I haven't even mentioned that I'm gonna forget to mention. Like I said, there's so many actors in one room a lot, but there's no magic or flow to anything. And there's multiple times where people just kind of... There's a lot of singing for seemingly no reason. These scenes that are probably supposed to feel very... I don't even fucking know. Like, they're supposed to lift you to some, higher plane of emotion or something. And I don't know, it's just nothing. There's just... I felt nothing throughout this, and it just kept going and going and introducing more people and more people and more people. I don't... What is it? Like I said, it's if it had more of a mystery element, maybe it would have had some sort of through line that would have helped things feel a little more connected. Maybe. Just maybe, possibly. But the biggest mystery just ends up being, like, is this a comedy? What genre is this? How are we supposed to feel about this? What fucking year are we in? Because they do go back and forth between their time in Amsterdam, which was in the 1918 area, and then the 30s where we are now. And it's the biggest clue they give you is facial hair will change. Like, that's pretty much it, I think. So, Alessandro Nivola is somebody I didn't mention yet, who also I feel like is a victim of this movie, because he can really bring something when it's asked of him, but here, he's one of the biggest victims of that line he just said. Is that supposed to be funny or serious? I really don't know. So that's how I felt a lot of this, was just like, I don't know. Like, what is this? What are they trying to do? And you're asking this. I feel like just the whole runtime is just these questions. Or it's not like American Hustle, where you can watch the movie and you can kind of get swept up in it, and there'll be some interesting choices made and some good performances. But then every now and then you're like, why the fuck did that happen? Or like, what the hell was that? But no, what the fuck was that? Why the fuck did that happen? Is 2 hours and 15 minutes essentially, and you would think that would keep you occupied, but no. Despite asking these questions for 2 hours and 15 minutes, I was also trying to deal with just being bored out of my fucking skull. So I don't know how you can get all this talent together and somehow make it not work. It almost, you would think it would have to be intentional to do that. But it's not even like this unintentional disaster that's ultimately beautiful at the end of the day because of it. This is just a... Did all these actors not have better things they could be doing? Like, it's weird. So that's all I can really take from this, I think. It just leaves me feeling so empty. I don't know. I don't know how else to approach it. That's what it is. So let's just go on to The Woman King. The movie by Gina Prince Bythewood, who did like Beyond the Lights and Love and Basketball and stuff like that. She also did The Old Guard, which I still have not seen, weirdly enough. It just kind of went by me and then I never caught up to it. But it appears that she has taken these genres that she's dealt with so far and kind of blended them together here for this very interesting outcome. The interesting thing about this movie is that it was one of those ones where it just kind of seemed like another movie. Obviously, people were really, crying outrage about the historical accuracy and, how it betrays the people that were in this. At the same time about that outrage, I will just say my approach to this movie is my approach to any other movie that is considered historically inaccurate, and that is, number one, I'm not a historian, and I'm not going to scan Wikipedia to pretend that I am. Nor am I gonna, read something that somebody just straight up copy and pasted from Wikipedia and put into a comment section so that they could pretend they were passionate about something, pretend that they've known all this stuff, and didn't just start researching it because somebody made a comment when the first trailer for this came out, and then that ballooned, and now everybody wants to pretend that they're really passionate and outraged about something that they had no idea of prior to this movie's existence. There are some historians, obviously, that I'm sure did know what they were talking about. But like I said, when that sparks people with all this fake outrage just for the sake of internet points, I just do not give a fuck whatsoever. And please do not fucking copy and paste Wikipedia into this comment section, let alone any other, because you are a useless person. So, now, with that out of the way, secondly, what I want to say about me not being a historian is I pretty much approach any movie based on history like it's going to be inaccurate. Because when has there ever been one that was completely accurate? Like I always say, that's ad nauseum. Like I always say, that's what documentaries are for. But there's even so many documentaries that are bullshit. Just stick to fucking books then. Just you're not going to get historical accuracy from pretty much any movie ever, and that's pretty much the way it is. So I just had to approach this as a movie, as if it was Braveheart or whatever, because we all know that everybody's felt the same way about Braveheart for however long. And yeah, I just whatever. So going into that now, yeah, I was just kind of seeing it as like, oh yeah, that's that movie. And it's a genre that I'm not really that into, so it's just like, alright. But then I started hearing a lot of good word about it, and then more good things about it, and then more good things about it, and it just kind of, like, it almost seemed like the praise was, like, drowning out all the controversy and all the fake outrage. So it was like, okay, I should probably check this. And then I actually started to get excited about it, and then I realized that I had one chance to see it, pretty much, because it was literally on its way out. It left so fucking Amsterdam could get a couple of theaters, which is strange. But, yeah, so I think one problem was that I did start to go in with a lot of hype. So it had, like, all these expectations to live up to. So I do come out of it thinking that it's quite good and very well made, but I'm not, like, totally in love with it. And I said that could have been all the hype I had heard going into it. So there's that. But I mean, when it starts with this opening scene, and you see, after you've been bombarded with so many battle scenes of just armies colliding and just a lot of faceless bodies just sort of mangling each other in goreless PG-13 fashion, and it's this blank, like watching the snow on, you know, a TV that's gone out. Just things colliding, and that just gets so tedious and boring. And so to actually see, like, the specific choreography going through this opening battle scene, it just immediately felt like, oh good, this is a breath of fresh air. And it's like, oh, they actually put thought into these battle scenes. And it's like, okay, so that's a very good start. And the fact that the action scenes do keep that up throughout the whole movie, that does have a lot of action in it, is just right away a big plus. So it has that going for it already. And then immediately, because you would think in movies like this you would get, like, you know, all the battle scenes, and then as it goes on there'd be like these half-assed attempts at, like, you know, there being humanity to the specific characters or whatever. But here it does feel like, and the fact that it's immediate also, like right after this battle scene, seems a bit risky, but yeah, when we have these moments when the warriors come in and the people, like, can't look at them, and then you see, like, Lashana Lynch especially, like, have these interactions, like, where she sees the kid that's kind of looking up at her, and you see Tuso and Beatty for the first time kind of looking, and it's like, there's something really human and real about that kind of interaction that you can see where when they come in and they're coming down the line, and when they're introduced in the opening scene, there's something just completely mythical about them. And to kind of see this humanity go against the sort of mythical qualities to them, is where you kind of start to immediately bring the characters to life in a way to where these are people that you don't mind getting attached to as it goes on, and they're not just going to be, like, you know, faceless warriors that just collide into random battles throughout an overlong movie or anything like that, like a lot of movies are. Um, and the ensemble in particular is an embarrassment of riches, because I feel like when I went in, the only two people that I knew were in it, because I didn't really look up a cast list or anything, was Viola Davis and John Boyega. And Davis just kind of has this inherent power that she's bringing into it. Like I feel like there's more I really should go into with Davis's performance, but at the same time I feel like this is just kind of what she does best. Like just kind of brings this inherent presence and power to this part, and we do see like her weaknesses and like the things that kind of break her a bit. And the fact that she's able to kind of persevere through those is always present and great. Um, but man, I was really taken by just the ensemble in general, where we talked about Tuso Mbedu, who is amazing here, Lashana Lynch, who is amazing, Sheila Adam also really stands out. I was noticing, like, as it went on, the more, like, because usually movies like this, you have characters that are just like, oh, there's that person, and then this person, and it's like, oh, I think I remember that person from maybe that scene. I don't know. The characters were all running together. But here, it was like, it just kind of kept going, because it was like, first you see Lashana Lynch, and it's like, she has one moment, it's like, oh, that character really stands out. And then Tuso Mbedu has, multiple moments, and it's like, oh, she really stands out also. Then Sheila Adam comes in, and it's like, oh, this character really stands out also. And it just kept building the ensemble as it went, to where you actually care about, all the characters. Like, even the characters that we don't really see and don't really get to know, there's, like, an established community enough to where the movie feels gigantic, but it also feels intimate at the same time, where it's like, you get the sense that even the characters just sort of wandering around in the background, you feel like are all part of this one place, and it's not just like, faceless extras or anything like that. And that's something that's, like I said, a lot of movies like this don't accomplish very well, and it's very rare, it feels like, that they do. And then you obviously have a lot more of this character building when it gets to like the training sequences. There's the sort of light, funny moment with the sword where Ubedo can't even pick it up, and Lashana Lynch can just throw it around like nothing. And while that's great as like this light, funny moment, and kind of gives you that sort of breaks the whole serious nature of everything else. Like I said, typically that's all it would really serve the purpose as, but here it is like, an actual character building moment, and you'll find that a lot with a lot of stuff. There's also the moment where they do the prank with the gunpowder, and you think that that's just kind of all it is, and then that ends up becoming like a serious battle plan later. And it's like how all these things kind of start off. There's like the setup and the payoff when it comes to the training scenes, and then the actual battle scenes is really well done and coherent also. And like I said, it seems like the bar is really low when you're just like, oh, it's coherent. Amazing. But like I said, a lot of these movies are so sort of like messy when it comes to like, doing big battle scenes, and the way characters are utilized and stuff like that. It usually just feels so throwaway and just sort of uninteresting and uninvolving. So it's like to be able to feel involved in all this stuff where it's like you see these things in their basic nature, and then how they turn into these things that end up, really helping in the long run. And these characters that start in one place and end up at another, and we see that full journey. And even ones where their journey is mostly like off screen before the movie started, we get the vibe of their journey enough, especially through their interactions with each other and when they talk about their histories. And when they can utilize those histories also, and we can actually kind of see how we get the sense somebody came from one place by how they are in battle and stuff like that. And the way all of that is established is really great. So if there are some setbacks here. Like this sounds like a lot of praise, but there's also stuff like the subplot where Umberto gets involved with this, gets attached to this dude. And I just didn't really care about that. There is like this story, this sort of blossoming love story, serves its purpose as far as like the story, and I guess helping to build character. But like romantically, which it felt like they were also going for, it didn't really feel like it served its purpose to its fullest. So that only felt like it was like sort of half here, like half doing its job. There is I guess you could say a reveal maybe midway through or a little after midway through, that does feel almost like kind of a soap opera reveal. And it's like, I actually think they handled it relatively well. They handled it about as well as they could reveal a turn like this. And it does have some moments like in like the epilogue portion of the movie where it kind of gives a certain weight to it, but overall, I didn't really feel like emotionally moved or anything by something like that, which I feel like is, one of the obvious points. I mean, it's, I guess when they show something as like a flashback and then to present day about how we got to this point, there is something there that kind of, rouses a little something, but for the most part, I don't know if for me it reached, as well as I could. But like I said, I also just go into movies like this kind of skeptical anyway, just because it's not my genre. So it's like kind of going through that also. Like if this was a genre, I feel like that I was like really, really invested in and into anyway. A lot more of this might hit even more. So it's like as you can see, one of the way I've been praising it is that how it's unlike a lot of those other movies. So that probably has a lot to do with that. It's also really well shot, but at the same time, I also feel like it's kind of done in by how digital a lot of it looks. I guess you could say almost like it's too clean visually. I guess you could say. Where I feel like if it maybe had a bit more of like an old-fashioned look to it or something, like if it was shot on film or something, it might have more of the I've lost what I'm trying to say here, but it's see this is a good sign because when I'm getting to the criticisms, I can't even really articulate it what it is that I'm looking for. So there is that, but I do think there is something about things looking a bit too clean and a bit too digital that can kind of take away from otherwise really great cinematography. And I didn't really mention Boyega much. He is good here also. We just talked about him in Breaking, and obviously he's. I don't know that he's had a misstep yet that was like his fault as an actor. Um, so he's obviously bringing a lot of strength to a lot of his roles. As we suspect, I love that. I mentioned this when we were talking about Breaking. I love that John Boyega has continued to live up to his potential. Where when Attack the Block came out, and it was like, oh, he kind of looks like young Denzel. And he's like actually really making this great career for himself and putting out these really stellar performances just over and over again. And here, the way he sort of is able to use his huge presence, but at the same time, he also kind of has this vibe that he's still inexperienced as far as his position as king. But it's and the balance there between like like having the feel of it, but then when we kind of see sort of the inner workings of what's going on with this character, we get that sense that the confidence isn't quite as there as it might seem when he's putting it out to everybody below him. So he handles that really well, and I'm still can't wait to see what else he's going to do with his career because he's got a lot to bring also, as well as the rest of this amazing ensemble. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I really have to say on that. So, yeah. So, we can get back to all of our horror stuff, which is, I think the next thing is going to be a few verses, and then we'll go into all that other stuff for this month, and then onward award stuff and all that other stuff. So, until whatever the next thing is, I think that's it.